Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for spending a beautiful day with me. My name is Jeannie Regan-Dinius. Until last Friday, I was your tax dollars at work. I work for the Department of Natural Resources in the Division of Historic Preservation and Archaeology. And so we dealt with, or that office deals with the preservation of the built environment. Buildings, bridges, cemeteries, and then also archaeological sites. And part of what that office is and what my responsibility was is going to be what I'm going to show you today about the database, and then we're going to also talk about architectural styles and how to figure that stuff out. As of last Friday, I just started a new job. I'm working for the largest cemetery in the state, Crown Hill Cemetery, and I am their historic preservation officer. So I've started a new job, but I told Brian I would be happy to still do this project because I still love this office and all the stuff that they do. I went to a job, not from a job, and so I'm still happy to share what this office does. And so know that when, next week, if you've got questions, there are people in Indianapolis, your tax dollars, who can help with this stuff, and I'll show you where to find names on the website and stuff like that. So we're going to kind of go back and forth between the book and the database, and then also the website. There's some great shortened descriptions of architectural styles on the website, and also Indiana examples, because this book, which again is one of the leading books, it is the book on architectural styles, is nationwide. And so sometimes we get Midwest nuances, we get Indiana nuances that sometimes adjust. And so sometimes you're going to be looking at a house and go, I thought that was Italianate, but it has that, because Hoosier sometimes added things onto their house that were Queen Anne to their Italianates. And so that's why sometimes it's a little different, and then so the website will show that. So when you're looking at your home or any building, the very first thing I always look at when I'm trying to figure out architectural style is the roof line. The roof is going to be one of the defining factors in what your what style of house that you are going to be looking at. And so when you start looking at like a Gothic revival, which if you all, do we all have the same version of the book?
It should be exactly
all right.
the same.
Page 196 is the Gothic revival, and I learned that I go to by the roof first because I learned from McAlester, and so that's where they start. And so you'll see that the very first thing we talk about is the roof line. What does the roof shape look like? And depending on the roof shape will give you a hint that it might be that style of building. And then from there, using this book, you can go on to your windows, and the windows will make a difference, and things that add to it, the trim, things like that. So again, you can look at a style of house or a style of a building, a commercial building in the downtown, but the first thing you look at is the roof line. Is the roof different than anything else? And then you look at the windows and the detailing, and it'll show you then the differences between a Romanesque revival, an Italianate, a Gothic, things like that. So the website is the Department of Natural Resources, Division of Historic Preservation and Archaeology. If you can see up here at the top, it's www.in.gov/DNR/historic-preservation. And if you go to Help for Owners here with the big question mark, and then you can go to Buildings and Bridges here. And it will go through the different, so whether you're looking at a building, a barn, a bridge, there's different architectural styles for each of those. And so if you're interested in bridge styles, if that's your thing, and you want to know if it's a pony truss or whatever kind of other truss bridge it is, you can go to this part of the website, and it will give you all of the different styles and how it's looking at something. And so you can look at it, tell you the terminology, the different types of bridges, and then the different styles. And so if you're looking at a bridge in downtown Winnemac or out in the country, and you're like, well, I wonder what kind of style that is, this is a great place for you to go. Now, if we go back to, there's also barns, whether it's a basement barn or a German bank barn. They're going to look, there's some similarities, but there's going to be differences, and this will describe the differences of those. So it's a great piece that way. And then buildings. So these are so we've got architectural styles, there's high styles, and then vernacular. High style, think of it as the fancy stuff designed by an architect. Those are going to be the high styles. Vernacular is usually, especially older buildings, the early ones that are going to be here in the 1840s, 1850s, that the owner designed and built, or the farmer just built his own farm, will be vernacular. That's not an insult saying one's better than the other. It's just how architectural historians have put them into categories and stuff like that. So don't think, well, if it's not at a high style Italianate, it does not make it an outstanding piece. It's just that the designer was not professionally trained. And you'll probably get a lot of Italianates in the downtown. And so here's features to look for. So this is like a quick overview. The book will be great to take out in the field with you. It'll have the roof styles and things like that. But here it talks, again, first thing is your roof. Talk about your roof, all the things that could be a part of it. Just a basic history, and then some photos. And so then you can look at, and they tried to do a difference between commercial, schools, housing, so you could see how that translates into different pieces. So like this is a commercial building, and that might look just a tad bit different than a school, but still Italianate, okay? These usually go up to about the Art Deco and the Art Moderne, and the bungalows are the most recent in this category, this series of styles. Anything post 1945, post-war, basically. There is another thing that just came out last year. It's the post-war housing reference guide here. It's a long document, but if you're so interested, so it talks about different versions of post-war housing that probably a lot of you think, well, that's not historic yet, but we're looking at houses now into the 1980s as being historic. Makes me feel old, but it is, So you can see, the different types of, whether it's a builder who did it, different styles, this is all on here. So this is a really great piece. The other thing to look at is if you're looking at a housing development, a suburb, and some of the different styles. So there might be, whether it was tract housing, whether it was designed by an architect, and so there's only 20 houses in that development that they're all high style. But ranches and things like that are important part of our built environment, and so it's an important thing that we need to start looking at now before we lose them all, or before they all become vinyl sided, things like that. But so, again, I'm a big fan of coming to this page because, again, for the buildings, and if you think, well, I think I've got a federal, what's federal style? It gives you some very quick things to look at, to view. You can kind of look at the style there, and then you can use the book to confirm it, to take out in the field with you when you're doing it that way. Now, this is something you're just going to need to play with. But the thing that you can go to, so we're going to go back to the home page for Historic Preservation Archaeology. All right, so if you go down here, and then it says Shaard and IHBBC map here under the resources link. Shaard is a database. We like to shorten everything in our field. So it's a State Historic Architectural and Archaeological Research Database. Shaard is easier. We thought we were funny when we labeled that, because a shard is also an architectural piece of pottery. Like when you get a broken piece of pottery, that's a shard. We thought we were funny. All right, so it's two aspects to the Shaard. And I'm going to start with the database itself. So you click right here, it says access to Shaard. If you click on that, it takes you to this landing page. You're going to enter as a guest. You do not need to request an account. This is for archaeologists only. Archaeology sites, because they are looted, heavily looted by people, are password protected. But since this is all above ground stuff, you just enter as a guest. You're going to read this and say you're going to behave, and you're going to accept, and then you're going to go from there, and you get this. And so there's different things that you can look at. There were different surveys in the office at different time periods for different reasons. So like the Historic Theater is looking at all the theaters in the state. So there's different types of information in there than in the county survey, which I'm going to go into more detail, which has different information than the cemetery registry, the historic bridges, or the National Register. So you can use all of these to do more research on your house. So the county survey. So this is where we are going to use this book. We're going to start with this because this book makes more sense when you start with this book. So these are called the Interim reports. So in 1966 was the National Historic Preservation Act. So it was a federal act that mandated that each state have a state preservation office. And they gave us a list of rules. That's if you wanted federal money. So if we wanted Fed Highway money, HUD money, you had to have a state preservation office. And that's what the Division of Historic Preservation and Archaeology is. So each state has these. One of the mandates was to survey your state for the buildings. Tell us what kind of shape they're in, what's historic, what's not. Each state did their survey program differently. And I am proud to say Indiana is the only state to have surveyed the entire state. Other states do it project by project. So they might be in Pulaski County and only do 3 blocks in Winnemac. And then another 3 blocks in, what town did I go through? Royal Center. And then the part of the highway where we did county by county. We did systematically. We hired people to drive every road in a county. And then we would produce these interim reports, okay? So you'll see some information from the 1970s because that's when that survey was done. This one was done in 2009. We have now started resurveying because those counties in the 1970s, they were not looking at buildings from the 1940s because they weren't old enough then. A bungalow in 1970 would have only been 30 years old, not that old. So that's why today we resurvey counties. And so you'll see different time periods. And you'll also see maybe a house that in the 1980s wasn't as important as it is today because it was so long ago. So don't get hung up on some of the things I'm going to talk about, the ratings and all that kind of stuff. It's more about the history of the houses. So these books are great. They're beautiful pieces, hands-on. All of this information is in the database plus. So we're going to talk first about how to read the book, and then we're going to talk about how to use the database and why the database is better in most cases and stuff like that. So if you open the book, you'll see ratings. So this is on page 8. You're going to see ratings on buildings as outstanding, notable, contributing, or non-contributing. Notable means it's pretty outstanding and pretty close. Maybe there's maybe they changed, the front door's a little off, or maybe a window here or there, but it's still in great shape and still has historical integrity. Because it can be in kind of crappy shape and still have historical integrity. You see those buildings who are like, it just needs a little love, but all the original stuff's still there. So it might have historical integrity, but it's not been maintained well. So that's one of the things that they were looking for is that. So outstanding, great shape, and historical integrity. Notable, going to be in pretty good shape, really, really good shape, and a lot of historical integrity. Contributing are some of those houses that need some love and maybe they replaced all the windows, or need some love and maybe they vinyl sided it or aluminum sided it, and it was a wood house. So there's some things that way. And non-contributing means it's not historically important, okay? Now you have to be careful with that non-contributing because again, if it's an old survey from the 1980s, and they might say a bungalow is not important, because in 1970 bungalows were not important, but today they are because they're so much older, things like that. So I don't stress about the rating. If the building you're covering or your house is non-contributing, that does not make it not historic or not important. These ratings have things to do with other programs in the office and make differences on the determinations. But this office also reevaluates. So especially if it's a survey from the 1980s, and they might reevaluate it and go, oh yeah, no, that's no longer non-contributing now, that's now notable, just because of the differences in age and things like that, okay? All right. Then if you go to the next page, we've got the mapping and numbering. You're going to see all of these buildings have an 11 or a 9-digit code. So the first 3 numbers, which for you guys is 131, it's the county. This is a federal county number, so it's not the county system like we know today where 1 is Adams County and 2 is Allen County, and you guys are number what?
66.
66, okay. It's not that system. This has to do with a federal listing of all the counties in the United States in alphabetical order. So Pulaski County is 131. It's not a big deal. The middle number, okay, is going to be the topographic quadrangle map. If you don't know what that is, don't worry about it. This numbering system and this program is made for a lot of different people, and the topo map is used by archaeologists a lot. But if you don't know the topo map, it's not a big deal. That number, just so you know that that's what that number is. And then the last digit of the numbers is a numbering by townships. So you'll see your guys' county up here at the top, and how the townships are laid out, okay? And they do it a serpentine method from the upper right-hand corner. Why? I don't know. That's just the way the Park Service developed it, so that's what we go with. So if you look at the Tippecanoe Township in the upper right-hand corner, just so of every building in that township will have the first 2 numbers of 00. Okay? Just that's what it is. And you go to the next one is Rich Grove, and it's 10. And then you go to Cass, it's 15. And then it's again serpentine, so then you go down to White Post, and that's 20. So if you go through this book, and let me just pick a page. I am going to go to page 74. So it's Winnemac scattered sites, which we'll talk about here in a minute what that means. Every building in that area starts with 33. Because of what civil township it's in, and that the Winnemac became, that's in the township that's 30, but there were so many that they went to 33, okay? And then the last 3 digits are just the numerical order. They go on the map and go, that's house 1, that's house 2, or 001, 002, 003, okay? So when you're looking up a site, you just need to understand how that system works. And the part of it is just playing with it. You'll get to know it pretty well. If you look at the rankings and the listings on any page, so if everyone will go to page 59, and this is in Madairyville. And again, it's 2-1 because it's in the township of 20, but because we're in Madairyville itself, they added a 2-1 to it. And if you look at the first listing there, it's number 001. Its rating is C, it's contributing. It's a house. The address is 306 East Maple. It's a side gable bungalow from the 1920s. And then the last thing on there, it says 397 parentheses. That's the topo number. Again, if you were an archaeologist, you would care, but since we're not, it's not a big deal. All right? And so when the surveyors went out and surveyed all of these buildings, they filled out this big piece of paper about this long, lots of different information. But look how little information is here on this listing. I mean, you've got 6 things. It's address, it's side bungalow, it's 1920s, there's a garage, and it's important for architecture. Not very much information about it. And that's because it's a book, and I can't put everything in the book, but I can put everything into the database. So we're going to now go to the database. So there's a variety of ways to look up the information about your property. If you know the survey number, all right, so it's 131 dash, and that Madairyville, and there it goes, 397 dash, and then it was 21001. So I put that in there, and that's all I put in there, and I'm having the computer look at it. There's my house at 306 Maple Street, right? And so then I'm going to hit View, and there is going to be tabs about each bit of information. So the first one's some general information, so that it's survey number, its rating is contributing, it's just a house. We did this data in 2008, so that you know how long ago it was. If it were listed in the National Register of Historic Places, that National Register number would be here, but this one's not listed, which is fine. It's county, it's legal township, and then there's that topographic quad name. And then I'm going to go to the next, continue on. There's an address, so this is some geographic information. So we got an address, a city, some locational information, and then the coordinates. This is the longitude and latitude only we use the UTM, which is the Universal Transmarcometer, which is the metric systems version of longitude and latitude. Not a big deal for houses with an address, but we use it heavily with cemeteries because it's in the middle of the woods. These longitude and latitude, or these UTM numbers, never change. And in 100 years, I can go and put these into the system, and it'll take me to that cemetery or to that house that was torn down or to the barn that was torn down, things like that. So that's why we keep track of those. And then we get some site information. And so there's just, again, and you need to go through this and kind of see the different things that are for each house, whether it's common names. So like you might see a building that on the first page says it's a commercial building, and then here it might say Tucker Realty, because that's what everyone calls it. It's a building, it's not in a historic district, which we'll talk about here in a bit. It's ownership, it's past use and present use. If we know that there's any kind of legal protection about it, so there's just some information about that. And then there's some structural information about the house. So we know it's in the 1920s. This one. So you could look up your house and we'll tell you what we think the style is. Now, I will tell you, not always correct, because we have two things happening here. One is that the surveyor, maybe they didn't get it exactly right, and we didn't review it right, or when the data entry person put it in, they may have pushed the wrong button. So again, don't stress if you're like, wait a minute, that's not a bungalow, that's an Italianate, and I clearly know that. We can always change that back at the, if you find one of those, you can call us and go, hey, I think somebody messed up, and that needs to be that. But yeah, the style is a bungalow craftsman, okay? Some replacement, there were replacement windows, and the roof has been replaced, so there's just a bunch of information about this. It's a 1.5 story, it has an addition, some wings, there are some additions on the back. It's bays, which means number of kind of room sections. It's a brick foundation and brick walls, asphalt roof. Some information about the porches and things like that. And then usually the houses that are outstanding and notable will have more about the statement of significance. There'll be more information about the history of the house. Some of the other houses that are just kind of the common person's house, they don't always have that. Now, it could be something that the research that you guys do could be added into Shaard. So they could always add that in. And then the other thing, the last thing, is you'll get photographs of the house. Okay, so I don't know if you guys know this house here in town, but it'll be different, some different photos of it from different sides and different pieces, things like that, depending on the style of house. Let's say I know, because the book, I want everything in Madairyville, so I'm going to just put, because this will do partial searches. So I'm going to push -21. I need to put Pulaski County because there are sites that begin with 2-1 in every county in Indiana. So let's just go to Pulaski. There we go. So now we'll do it. So this is going to give me all of the sites that are in this Madairyville. 145 sites that start with 2-1, and you can just see, lots of them that. Well. Now, again, I did a partial search, so you'll notice that this is, the 2-1 is from here in the middle number, not the 2-1 in the township number. So I'm going to fix that by telling it I want it only in White Post Township. And that'll reduce the number of pieces. There. Now I got 69, which is the number we have in Madairyville, so that's why. And so then you have all the houses there, all in a row. You can keep going page by page, and it'll be the same pages as the same numbers as these in here. But again, more information about each piece. So that's one of the reasons why I like the database more than I like the book. The book is very limited on how much information it gives. The other thing about this, the database, is that we updated it as things happen. If we find out a building's been torn down, it gets updated. Maybe a tornado came through and we'll put that in. Maybe it was restored and we find out that the building now has totally been restored and has been updated that way. We'll put that in there. So it's a way to update it. We can add more photos and make it more up to date, because the moment we print the book, the book's out of date. And so this gives us a way to update that in that manner. And so you can get lots of different information. Now, let's say you don't know the survey number, but you do know it's in White Post Township, and you know that the address is on, is it Maple Street? Maple. Now, the data, so the people who were out surveying put 215 East Maple. Did they put E period, EAST, Maple Street? The data entry people were told to type it in exactly as seen on the paper. So when I did it, when I surveyed by hand, I said E period. But when Brian did it, he wrote EAST. So if I tried to find an address of EAST, but it should be E period, it's not going to come up because the database isn't going to find it because it's an exact match. So instead, I always tell people less is better if you're just doing some generic searches. So I'm just going to put Maple for the street, for the address, because it'll do a partial search, and then it'll give you the ones on Maple Street, and then you can decide which one you want. And then like, oh, this the 207 was what I was looking for. So you might have to. So that would be a way to narrow it down by address. Is just put the name of the, because again, was it Maple? And it might be Maple Street, but again, the person writing it out wrote Maple Avenue.
There's one of each in Madeireville.
Of course, that makes it even more difficult. But that's an issue that we've had, that the surveyor didn't realize that it was Maple Avenue, and they still put Maple Street. So just by putting Maple in, it gives you now only 4 houses that you need to look at for more information. All right, you could look for just Madeireville, Dary. Well, I could just put Madeiry. Let's say I don't know how to exactly spell Madeireville, or I'm lazy, because it's a partial search also, and it'll give you everything in Madeireville. And if you can see up there, it's thinking. It's thinking. And so that there are 91 in or near Madeireville that were surveyed. So you can search that way. Now, you can search by historic name. Now this one's This one's a little more difficult. Not more difficult, but just gives you a curveball. If I do a search by historic name, well, look at that one house, that bungalow house that I just showed up there. You gave me 3 families who lived there. You gave me bones and somebody else's. So which one's in the database? Are we calling it the Bones house? Are we calling it the Smith house? Are we calling it, So you might put a historic name up there of what you think the house is called. It might not show up because maybe the surveyor didn't know that's what it was called. Or maybe they put another name there instead. So again, don't get all upset, because I'm going to show you a different way to find that house then too. There's a couple of different ways to find these houses. But if you know it, and it was Connor?
Connor.
C-O-N-N-E-R. E-R. Well, yeah, I took Madeireville off. All right, but I'm going to spell it O-R because I don't know how to spell Connor. And so I did a search, and up here it says your search does not return any records because I spelled it wrong. Well, all right, I do know that there are a couple of ways to spell Connor, so I'm just going to put C-O-N-N because I don't know if it's E-R or O-R. Good, partial searches are a huge thing, and that gives you 2 different options, and then you can decide whether, are you looking at a farm or are you looking at a house? And you said it was a house that was outstanding. If I just click on that, that's a lovely house. That is just beautiful. And so that's a way for you to find that house. And then again, you can view it and view more details about, especially on structural, it'll have more information about it. This one, again, it's in excellent shape. It's been slightly altered because they built a porch on it in 1907. From the house that was 1884. There's more details about and look, there's more information about it because it's an outstanding house. So you're going to find more things, and that's where the ratings come from. And that's why I don't stress about it as much as some people do, because things change and stuff like that.
And so like ours says final signing on it, but I'm sure underneath, if you take that stuff off, and they look at it.
There's all that kind of stuff that can happen, and that's the beauty of ratings changing and stuff like that, and that something that the office will reevaluate a house if the rating is over 5 years old, because things happen. And so if INDOT came and did something in Winnemac today, this is a good starting base for it, but we'll have to reevaluate all the houses that might be impacted by the NDOT project because it's more than 5 years old. So yeah, because you just never know what people are going to do. You know, houses burn, tornadoes happen, people restore, new owners, things like that.
So let's say that it has not been included in the outstanding list, and by interacting with the survey, we find out that the vinyl siding was the problem.
Yep.
Could they rectify that by removing the siding, restoring whatever's underneath it? Is it likely then, or at least possible, that the people at the state would recategorize that then?
Yes.
From the, yes. Okay.
Yeah, because there's just so many things that happen, so it's fluid, and that's why I don't like the book as much, because people assume the book is. If it's a snapshot in time, the database is more fluid, and things change. So if you restored it, it then might, or if you take the vinyl siding off, even if you don't restore it, it might be eligible for the National Register, and then you could get tax credits to restore it. So there's all these nuances, and that's why I always say that call the office and talk to the people there who use this every day and understand the nitty-gritty of the programs, because it might make a difference.
What is like restoration? They have a criteria?
There's a criteria. It's called the Secretary of Interior Standards, and on the database, if you go, well, let me start with here. There's help for owners, and then there's just different things, and so there's different, like preservation. You can go to preservation methods, and it'll talk about tools and the Secretary of Interior standards. So these are the preservation standards nationwide that you should look at if you're going to do preservation of a building. Doesn't mean you can't change things and stuff like that, but this is like the best standards to go by. Yep, and so yeah, there are a ton of different resources that you can get through these the website.
Because of the workshop and the interest that these folks have in their house, it's possible. How do I ask this question? You might be able to get a determination ahead of spending your money, and Paul has explained this to me, and if you would explain that to them, I think it would be of great interest.
So you think, okay, I would like to maybe get the house listed on the National Register so we can get the tax credits to do work on the house. You call the office, and again, going back to the main page, and contact us. And then you can talk to Paul Diebold is the guy he's been talking about, and call Paul and say, I want you guys to determine whether this is going to be worth my time. Right. Because we're not interested in ripping all the siding off if it's not going to be eligible. And then Paul can walk you through that process and walk you through the steps of what you need to do, and maybe come up and do a site visit to look at it and things like that. He might be like sending me some pictures. It depends is my favorite answer, because each situation is going to differ. And so you can look at it that way, and then Paul will be like, yeah, we think that if you took the siding off, this will totally 100% be eligible. And then once it's listed, then you can get the tax credits, which you then would talk to Ashley, who's down here.
All this consultation is free.
It's all free. Your tax dollars at work. And so then you would talk to Ashley, who's the tax credit administrator, because there's tax credits for businesses, and then there's tax credits for at the state level for homeowners and stuff. So, and they can talk to you about what that means and the steps to. I did it for my personal home. I mean, I got $20,000 in income tax rebate for doing things to my house I was going to do anyways. So why not? Yeah. So yeah, so if you don't start doing any work until you talk to them, because I love people. They get all the way done, and then they want the tax credits, but what you did made it not eligible. So start with talking to the staff first.
So interesting that you said 1980 is now being considered. So our house, the back part burnt. Was rebuilt in the 80s.
Okay.
So like you have 1890 in the front.
Yep.
And like 1980 in the back.
And especially that you can prove, because it was a fire. I mean, so there's.
It was in the news and all that.
Yeah, so you can prove that there was a fire and there's a reason you didn't just add an addition because and depending on the addition of what was added, might make a difference. Kind of the good overview is stand on your sidewalk, and can you see the addition from the sidewalk?
No.
That's perfect. That's always a key thing. And then if you can't see it from the sidewalk, does it go with the house? Does it match? It doesn't have to be matchy, but you don't want
your house this big and your addition this big.
Right.
So, but if you can't see the addition from the back,
Does registering your home on the list of,
National Register.
does it protect it from future stuff, or is that something different?
Depends. My favorite answer. So it depends on the project. So if there are state or federal funds being used on the project, so it's NDOT coming through, it's, I don't know where you live next door to, but it's a new HUD housing project, that could protect it, that could make it, could change the project. If it's your own personal money, does not affect it at all. You could paint your house pink with purple polka dots, and the worst they can do is delist it. And then it just means takes it off the list. So my house, I've got an asphalt shingle roof. It's a brick house, colonial revival from the 1920s, but I did interior stuff. I have an awesome backyard barbecue area. None of that impacted it. I could do all that kind of stuff. So it's just whether you have local ordinances. Do you guys have a local zoning?
I was just going to mention that is the one way that a National Register listing can help you in terms of protecting the house into the future, is if there are local zoning laws that recognize the National Register properties. Some do, some don't.
Some communities do, some don't. Now, if you want to know more, before we move on, how about this? And you're like, there's just so much more I need to know. Here is the annual preservation conference. It's coming up in September. It's going to be in South Bend this year, so close to you guys. And so there's information September 27th through the 30th. There's a Preservation 101, so it talks about all the players, so that way you know what's the difference between DHPA and Indiana landmarks and all that kind of stuff, to very technical stuff that might be something on. There's one on fountain restoration if you care about that. So I would definitely go to the conference if you're able to, because you can even go for one day. You can look at the agenda and see which day's best for you. But it's Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. So, all right. Going back to so that's the way you're going to survey. You're going to search in here. But if you're like, I'm still not finding the house, and I know it's important, a map would be so much easier, wouldn't it? Yes, it would. So we're going to go back to this Shaard and IHBBC map, which again, we love to abbreviate everything. Indiana Historic Buildings, Bridges, and Cemeteries map. You click on that. And then you have to click on this green button over here, and it's going to pop up a map. Kind of like it's going to look like a Google map. You can actually get this on your phone if you like. And then you can scroll in just to an area, and I'm gonna look at all those. So if you look over here, there's up here in the upper right hand corner, there is a layer list. So if I show this, triangles are cemeteries. So here are a couple cemeteries here, and there's a cemetery here. County survey is the dots, and then the different colored dots mean whether it's outstanding, notable, contributing, non-contributing, or demolished. And then other means something's wrong with the database and it's not coming up the way it's supposed to. Historic bridges are also color-coded, but they are squares. So like this up over here, there's the square there, it's a demolished bridge, but here's an outstanding home. So I could just say, I want to search, and I just want to go to Winnemac. There you go. And I just want to search Winnemac. Ooh, there's Winnemac. Look at all the pretty dots you guys have here in Winnemac. And I'm going to scroll in. And so you know your area, you know what your house is. I'm going to shut you off if you will go away. There you go. And you can scroll in and find your house that you're looking for. And you could do it through just this, footprint view. If I do this up in the right upper left-hand corner, the 4 squares, that'll give me the different. I could do an imagery. So if I know my downtown area. If you care about topos, you can do that. And then you can go to any of these dots, and I'm going to click on this dot right here because it's red, which means outstanding. And look, it's the county survey number there, so you now know the number. It's your opera house, which I love. It's outstanding. Oh, if I click on the report, this talks to the database. And there's your lovely opera house. And it's just a PDF version of the Shaard database I just showed you. So you could come through this way. And again, it gives you all that information about that, about the Opera House, what rating it is, it's a Second Empire, and kind of information. The only thing it doesn't have is the photos. You'd have to go to the database to look at the photos that are, the PDFs that are attached. But you can go to any of these dots. This one is, here's the survey, it's a commercial building, it's non-contributing, but which building is that? It's that.
What is the star designation?
The star designation, because it's a good for it star, is the National Register listing. So anything with a star on it means it's already listed on the National Register. And it might have hatched area. Are they up? Yeah. It looks like you guys don't have a historic district in Winnemac.
There is one.
I'm not seeing it, but it could be that we didn't, it's not mapped, and it's, let me go to Fort Wayne. I know they got a ton of them. Now, you could see, there we go.
Its name is the Winnemac Residential Historic District.
Okay, I just may not have been there. All right, well, and with the aerials, it can get very, and with the dots, it can get very overwhelming. So you're like, I want to take some stuff off. So you can, first thing I'm going to do is get rid of the aerial because it just changes things. So I'm just going to go to the address view and the view of the footprints. And there's too many dots. It's just too much for me. I can go here. I'm going to take the dots off, and I'm going to unclick on this. All the dots go away if I only click it once. But you see this hatched area? Those are historic districts that are listed on the National Register. A building can be listed individually on the National Register, or a neighborhood or an area can be listed because everything in that area has a commonality that makes it important. Usually neighborhoods, like the courthouse square sometimes are listed on the net because everything commercially is on there. And so it might be listed, if it's a building in a historic district that's listed on the National Register, it's already listed on the National Register. You don't have to get it listed again. So that, turn this back on so we can see the dots. So like this house right here, even though it is just contributing, it's just a contributing house, it is in this National Register district, so it's listed on the National Register. So you wouldn't have to do that. So districts are a way to go too, because in a district they don't go to the inside. It's only, that's another one that's only outside view.
But that can't be determined without professional.
You need someone who knows what they're doing. You could, an individual could do it, but you need someone who knows what they're doing, because it's not hard. It's just complicated and all the puzzles together. Okay. So again, you can search over here by these numbers in this search up here in the upper left-hand corner is not what we put into the database. It is the address system that a company called Esri has put together. So these are a little more. So 207, is it just Maple Street?
I think that's how they have it.
Mac. So I'm just going to put 207 Maple Street, Winnemac. Put the address in, hit search. It did not, did I spell?
It was in Madera.
Oh, that was in Maderaeville. Thank you. See? So it didn't come up with anything because there's no Maple Street there. But Maderaeville. And there it is. There's the house. And there's my house that we were looking at, one of them. So you could go by address. You could search by names. It's a little more difficult because it could come up with any of these areas. It could be a cemetery. These CRs, that's a cemetery named Connor, and then also we have other counties, because you can see 003, that's Bartholomew County, are popping up because there's something named. So searching by name in this is more difficult. So if you know this, you know the house, you know, but you can't find it listed by name, going by address or going to the map and finding it on the map is an easier way to do it than by name, because it just the enormity of cemeteries that way.
Does ownership play to it at all? Because I thought we had started looking a long time ago at some other place where it was like if somebody notable that owned it in the community that make a difference? Or
It
just,
depends.
okay.
So with how it depends is, were they important and did they do something important someplace else? So maybe it's let's just say they were a lawyer. So the important thing is actually their law office and the courthouse and not necessarily their home. Do you know who Ernie Pyle is? He was a reporter during World War II. Yeah, from Dana, Indiana, down southwestern Indiana. So his childhood home isn't as important as his home as an adult, when he was reporting from the over the European, the theater over there. So it depends. But let's just say his home's not, a law office isn't there. I used the lawyer states. The law office isn't there, and the courthouse isn't there. So then maybe it is his home. That's the important thing left. So that might make a difference. It could be something. It could be not architecturally stunning, but something important happened there. Then it could be listed that way. So a lot of depends, a lot of nuances. And again, talking to Paul and them about I know the history of this house, and this is what's important, and this is not, things like that.
That every house that is accepted must fit one of the 7 categories, is it, I believe?
4 categories.
Okay, and
Yeah,
you
4.
might explain that.
So the 4 categories are something, it's architecturally stunning, something important happened there, it's affiliated with somebody important, and then there's archaeology, which that's usually Native American stuff. So if it's that house that was outstanding, that the Connor house, okay, regardless of who lived there, it's architecturally amazing. Something important happened there. That is where the first women's rights convention happened in 1848. Okay, then that's going to be important. Martin Luther King Jr. lived there. And then we've got the architect. So it could be any of those, but it doesn't have to be national important. It could be state important. It could be locally important. It could be the most important doctor in town and why he was important. It could be his office or his house.
That's our situation.
Okay,
Let's
so
look it up there.
yeah, so that could make a difference. So yeah, get all your stuff together, get kind of all your ducks in a row, know all your history, and then talk to Paul and them, and they'll be able to help you out. Okay. All right, so if you're looking for more information on your building, definitely starting with the database and or the map, depending on which one's easier. Sometimes you need the database, sometimes you need the map. You have to use them both in concert together, okay? And it'll give you more information than you find in the book. But the book's fun because I'm a book person too. I like the tactileness of it. Questions? I know this is overwhelming. The big thing is to go home and play with it. You can't break it, so don't worry about that. You go in, go in searching, go looking for this and that. Look at other counties. Don't just look at your county. Look at some other counties and see what's available. If you went to IU, go see what the IU campus looks like and how it's listed and things like that, and play with it. So do some partial searches and stuff like that. That's the way to really learn this system. You could fall down a rabbit hole.
Really?
If you're interested in cemeteries, that was my program area. Huge cemetery, lots of information about cemeteries, National Register listings. And again, if you want to, you're like, I'm going to list my house. Going to look at other similar houses that are listed on the National Register will help you look at things and stuff like that. You can.
Are the register applications up there?
Yes, they are. So if you go on the National Register. And I'm just going to put Pulaski County, and
if you want to search for one that is the Thompson place in Winnemac, is on the National Register.
So you've got 11 sites listed there. So yeah, you've got so that's Dr. Thompson place. You can view it. So just get more information. Oh, and what it'll do is it'll bounce between data sets. So I'm in the National Register, because it clearly says it up here, I'm in the National Register. But here's its county survey number, and if I click on that, it'll go to the county survey data set. So it just takes a second for it to do it. Now, look, I'm in the county survey, and it's all that information that I was showing you that's in this book is there. And then if I just hit cancel, it goes back to the National Register listing. And so you get geographic information, some site information. This is for the National Register, so it's a little different. But and then at the very last thing under photos and PDFs, you get photos, and then you get the actual nomination form.
I can't stress too highly, if you're interested in listing your property, look at these, study them, look at how they're organized, because people who do this will charge you an arm and a leg if it's done outside, and DNR will help you with this once you get to a certain stage and to a certain degree. And they won't lay down and do architectural plans for you, but there is an immense amount of support available, and this is sort of, if you're interested in the register, this is where to start your study.
I agree 1,000%. I will warn you on one thing, and I can tell by looking at the picture of this. So if you go into site assessment and look at when this was listed, 1984. It's an old nomination. We have improved our methodology. We've improved how we've done things. We made things stricter. So I look at this and I'm like, oh, that was typed on a typewriter. If it's been typed on a typewriter, it's old. Maybe stay away from those. Go to something that's newer listed.
Mallon, Mallon, I believe it was done in the 90s or 2000s.
Okay. And I can tell you that another way to know how, the bigger the number here, the closer it was to current time. So this one is the 723rd one done in the state, where this is the 2,406th one done in the state. That's your county home. So if I go to the next page, next is there's this bridge, so that's the 2,670th. So that will help you look at, and I'll show you. I know you're not doing a bridge, but I'll show you what the difference is just in the look of the paper. See, it just physically looks different. So I immediately knew that other one was an old one, and this one's done on a computer and printed off, so you can see the difference and stuff like that. It's not typewritten. So I would, and again, you don't have to do one from Pulaski County. You can look at one that was in Marion County or in Jasper County or whatever, because it's the style of house that you're looking for. It's for a doctor, things like that, and you can do some searches that way. So you could just.
Paul has been wonderful. If you fill him in on the details of your house, recommending other similar.
Yes.
He knows them all.
He knows them all, yeah. He's been around for a while. And also on this page, nope. Find help for owners, state and national register. They have so there's a handbook. There is. How do I apply? More instructions. There, that's what I was looking for. Sample nominations. So these are good examples. These are examples that they think they did a good job, and they tried to do a variety of different ones. That's a residential property, things like that. But yeah, so going to but just going through the National Register pages and kind of all the links, because they all offer different bits of information. But the instructions, read the directions. They're huge fans of reading the directions. The staff at DHPA is available to talk to you more. We'll give you more details. If you need someone to walk you through the database some more, you're like, I'm confused, I can't find something. You just call in and ask for help. That's what they're there for. The National Register people, if that's the direction you want to go, they'll help you through this kind of stuff, and that's what they're there for. It's why you pay your taxes. So, questions? I know it's a lot. I know this is over an hour, 45 minutes to an hour is not enough time. What you need to do now is play with it. And again, you can't break the system. So don't have fear that you're going to do something and you're going to make it not work. You have no editorial rights, so don't worry about that. But going in, playing with it, looking at how it's connected to each other, and then how it connects to the book is huge. And then this guide and then the guides that are on the database or on the website will help you with architectural styles. And then once you start looking at roofs, you'll never be able to look at a house again without trying to determine what its architectural style is. You just can't. It's just,